everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Blake's Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for The Last Ritual by S.A. Sidor. This is a standalone novel within the Arkham Horror media tie-in books. For those who don't know, Arkham Horror is a board game inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft and his contemporaries, very much based in things like the Cthulhu mythos and stuff like that, which I am super into. Never played the game, never looked much into the game, but when I discovered that Arkham Horror had their own line of books, I thought that was super cool, and so I've been wanting to read some of them. Last October, I read The Mask of Silver by Rosemary Jones, I believe, which I enjoyed. I thought that it was a little bit underwhelming in some places, particularly the ending, but it was a book that I enjoyed. I had fairly decent expectations for Mask of Silver, and even though I enjoyed it, I think I was slightly underwhelmed, so I went into this with a little bit more tempered expectations, but I really enjoyed this book. This is one of my favorite books that I have read so far this year, I would say. As far as stuff that I enjoyed about this book, there's a lot. First of all, I really enjoyed the setup and the plot of this book. And essentially what this book is about is you have this this main character. It's kind of set up in like a frame narrative where the first chapter of the book and the last chapter of the book are set kind of in present day, with the main character, whose name is Alden Oakes, who is talking to, I believe, like a reporter or something like that about this experience that he had, which he then relays to the reporter. And the majority of the book is that story, talking about these crazy things that happened to him. And the general premise of what happened to him is he is an artist who moved back to Arkham, Massachusetts, which is a town which was popularized in the works of Lovecraft, where a lot of his kind of weird stuff was going on, and he is an artist who moved into this commune full of other artists, and is kind of doing his thing, and then he becomes interested in this possibly related string of murders and just weird stuff going on, and he starts to investigate that with a friend named Nina, and they start to try to figure out what's going on and discover a whole bunch of stuff that's going on behind the scenes with things like cults and rituals and the usual cosmic horror type of stuff that you get with Lovecraftian fiction, which I really enjoyed. I think it was a really nice blending of a mystery with the horror elements. The horror elements here are pretty understated for the most part. There's some overtly horrific moments of like gruesome stuff that happens in this book, but they're not super common, and a lot of the horror in this is just the kind of horror that I enjoy, which is this kind of Lovecraftian style of things just not quite being what they should be, you know, weird stuff going on, and then just getting more cosmic and crazy as things go along, which is totally kind of my thing. But I really enjoyed just the general, the plot of this book and the way that everything in that aspect was done. It was something where I was consistently engaged in the book. I always wanted to see what was coming next. I described this book in my written review and to people that I've talked to about it and things like that as very much like a page-turner type of book. Like every couple of chapters, you know, you would end with this thing that you're just like, I need to know what happens next, and that caused me to read slightly longer than I might otherwise have, which probably helped me get through this book a little quicker. You know, I just always was like, oh, I need to know like where this is going, because there's this interesting setup at the end of the chapter that leads into the next one and things like that, which is, you know, a pretty well-worn, I don't know if it would be a trope or just a writing tool that people use in order to keep people invested in their books, but it certainly works well here. And it really kept me engaged in the book, in addition to the fact that I thought that just the mystery of things going on, you know, you see all this stuff going on that's, you know, obviously not supposed to be happening, not normal, not, you know, just stuff that's really off that's happening, you know, obviously all these deaths and things like that, and trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes, why it's happening, and as things go along, it does take that more kind of Lovecraftian turn of having, you know, this cultish stuff going on, which is actually really interesting, something that I really enjoyed, and trying to figure out what they're doing and why and all that stuff, which I thought was really cool. I also really enjoyed the writing style of this book, which is not something I tend to talk about a huge amount, but I think that the way that this book was written was also very enjoyable. And you know, it's set kind of 1920s, and I felt like it did a good job of transporting the reader into that time period. You know, it's not, you know, super deep like into the setting or anything like that, but it does a good job of like kind of getting you in that headspace, I guess. And the writing style in general I really enjoyed about it. Again, the horror elements in here I really enjoyed, and the cosmic horror type stuff I really liked, which I like it when it's that more kind of unsettling, like something's wrong just beneath the surface type of horror, that then builds and builds to this big ending, which just has some crazy stuff going on. Definitely kind of similar to the other book that I read, Mask of Silver, where it builds to this big ending, whereas that one felt to me really kind of confusing in an unsatisfying way. This one was confusing in a way that I felt was at least somewhat more satisfying, where, you know, obviously, you know, it's Lovecraftian cosmic horror. You're not supposed to understand everything going on. In fact, there's some things in this book that I might have liked to understand a bit better, but I get that's kind of part of the deal that you get with these kinds of books. But it's confusing and weird, but it was done in a way that I thought was very interesting, even like cinematic in a way. Like you were reading it and I could just picture in my head in a way kind of what it could look like and things like that, which is really cool. And overall, it was just a really enjoyable book to read, and I had a great time with it. As far as stuff that I didn't like so much about this book, there are a couple of drawbacks that are not huge for me, but still something worth noticing. Which one of those is something that I already mentioned, which is there's certain things in this book, as they're investigating the mysteries and things like that, where I'm like, I wish I could have just gotten a little more information about that. Like, obviously, this is the kind of book, the kind of horror where you're not supposed to understand everything going on. That's kind of its shtick. But there was just certain things that came up. I'm particularly thinking, if you happen to have read this book before, there's a particular scene in a cave, or a couple of scenes in a cave, where there's just certain things going on, and think like imagery and things like that I still wonder about, and I'm like, what was actually going on there? Because it's never really explained. And I wish that it had been a little bit. Obviously, again, that's not really what these books are supposed to be there for. You know, you're not supposed to get everything necessarily. And I do wonder if other books within Arkham Horror will kind of expand on that a bit more, maybe. But that kind of thing I would have liked to get a little bit more of. But that's not a huge issue because, again, I kind of understand, you know, I've been reading this kind of thing for a bit now, so I understand you're not supposed to quite, you know, have everything explained to you or understand everything going on. The other more major issue that I had here was the characters. The characters I thought were all distinctive. Like, I was able to remember who everybody was. They were all unique in some way and things like that, and I enjoyed their interactions a lot, but there weren't really any characters that really stood out to me as particularly interesting or memorable. They were all good characters that, again, were distinctive enough for me to remember them while I was reading the book, but none of them were like super engaging characters to me, except for arguably the main villain of the book, which is memorable in some ways, but I think still none of the characters super stuck out to me or anything like that. But that's really the only major thing that I had with this book that I wasn't quite into. So overall, I really enjoyed this book a lot. It worked for me in a lot of ways. I thought it was super interesting. The cosmic horror elements, like the way that I would describe this book also is like if Lovecraft himself wrote a full-length novel in this kind of Lovecraftian cosmic horror Cthulhu mythos type style. which this does tie into the Cthulhu mythos, but there are not, as far as I'm aware, any direct like references to Lovecraft himself in terms of like the entities or things like that. But I think it is Cthulhu mythos. Because like Arkham, Miskatonic University, all that stuff is all in there. Anyways, but the way that the cosmic horror was handled in here felt very much like something Lovecraft would do to me, both in terms of how unsettling it was, in terms of how it just kind of built over the course of the book to this big kind of crescendo moment at the end, where it's weird and confusing and you don't quite get what's going on, and then it's just like just over in the blink of an eye, and you're left there just thinking like, whoa. To me, that feels very much like something Lovecraft would do if he were to write a full novel like this, and that is one of the things that I kind of am sad about when it comes to Lovecraft. You know, he died so young that he never got to do something quite like this, and granted, he was always more of a short story writer, but I would have loved to see what a full novel like this from him would have turned out like. But anyways, this felt very much like it scratched that itch for me, which was definitely a plus. So that is pretty much all I got to say for this review. As far as a rating out of 10 that I would give the Last Ritual, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. Really worked for me in a lot of ways. I really enjoyed it a lot. Did have those couple things, you know, the characters were not quite amazing to me, and there were some things that I would have liked to be a little further explored, a little further explained, but in general, this one really did work for me in almost every aspect, and I had a great time with it. So if you have read The Last Ritual, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. If you also really enjoyed it, if you have read any of the other Arkham horror novels, I intend to read more of them. That's a line of books that I'm really interested in diving more into. Let me know how you think this compares to the rest. If you have read any of the other ones, let me know what you thought of some of the other ones, if there's any particular standouts, any that I should prioritize getting, anything like that. And that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.